I have other concerns. There are other people that have things to say. I will yield back at this point, but hope that we can reject these provisions in the CR that actually make no difference in terms of reducing the budget and violate commitments that we have made.
Gentleman yields back. Read. Clerk will continue reading.
Page 264, line 9, section 1704, the level for Department of Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Resource Management, $1,204,240,000.
For what purpose the gentleman from California rise?
Take up amendment number 295.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 295, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. McClintock of California.
The gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation is a government-established, government-financed, so-called private nonprofit set up to act as a conduit to funnel public dollars to private environmental advocacy groups. The authorization for these grants has expired. Let me repeat that. There is no congressional authorization for this program, and yet the money just keeps rolling on. If we are actually serious about spending taxpayer money as carefully as they spend what they've got left after they've paid their taxes, then we ought to start by insisting that if Congress has not authorized a program, it should not be funded. If we ignore this principle, then why do we have any committees other than the Appropriations Committee? When Ronald Reagan very reluctantly signed the original legislation, NIFWIF's budget was $100,000. It has grown to $7.5 million, 75-fold. Nor was Reagan's signing statement exactly a ringing endorsement. Here's what he said. He said, "I must convey my serious reservations about the bill. The statements in the bill to the effect that the foundation shall be a non-profit charitable corporation and that it shall not be an agency or establishment of the United States are contradicted by the facts. Establishment of the foundation under the terms of this bill is an unwise and dangerous precedent." Well, Reagan's serious reservations about an unwise and dangerous precedent, his words, were well-founded. And at the very least, there ought to be a full congressional review of this program and a decision made to reauthorize it before we throw more money at it. Money, by the way, if you haven't checked the newspapers recently, that we don't have. In this particular case, these are public dollars being funneled to private concerns, many of which have a disconcerting habit of then turning around and suing the government, that is, suing taxpayers over environmental issues. Now, as we all know, all funds are fungible, so in essence, through this agency, we are using taxpayer money to give to groups to sue taxpayers. Not all of these private foundations are even domestic. Now, these grants have gone to such foreign groups as the Procratic Society of India, the Center for Dolphin Studies of Nelson Mandela Metropolitan University in central Mozambique, and to the San Lorenzo Public Outreach Program in Panama. Mr. Chairman, with our nation facing the worst peacetime fiscal crisis in our history, do we really need to continue these expenditures? And shouldn't we at least review the program and renew the authorization before we throw more money at it? I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Virginia, for what purpose?
Mr. Chair, I rise to strike the requisite number of words.
5 minutes.
I oppose the gentleman's amendment. It reduces the Fish and Wildlife Service by $7.5 million. Gentleman says that it is aimed at the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation, although it doesn't say so. But whether it is or not, it's still a bad idea. The National Fish and Wildlife Foundation raises private funds with minimal federal seed dollars. It should be encouraged, not eliminated. Last year, the foundation leveraged $40 million in federal funds into more than $180 million for on-the-ground conservation projects. That's a leverage ratio of 4.5 times. The Fish and Wildlife Foundation continues to be the best financial investment of public dollars to leverage private funds that pay for federal priorities. In 1984, a quarter century ago, during challenging budget times, as well as we have today, the foundation was created by a bipartisan group of members of the House and Senate to leverage taxpayer dollars with private dollars. This amendment would affect more than 400 conservation projects this year in most U.S. states and territories. These programs are non-regulatory, community-driven. They promote working landscapes and foster innovation. In this critical time of constrained budgets, you would think we would want the National Fish and Wildlife Foundation more than ever. So I would urge a no vote on this amendment. I yield back the balance of my time, Mr. Chair.
The gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from California. Those in favor say aye. Opposed say nay. Rule the noes have it. The amendment is not agreed to. The clerk will read.
Page 264, line 18, section 1705. The level for Department of Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service construction, $23,737,000. Section 1706, the level for Department of Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service land acquisition shall be $15,055,000. Section 1707, unobligated amounts under the heading Department of the Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service Landowner Incentive Program. From prior appropriations, all remaining amounts are rescinded. Section 1708, the level for Department of Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service Cooperative Endangered Species Conservation Fund, $2,479,000. Section 1709, the level for the Department of the Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service North American Wetlands Conservation Fund, $0.
Mr. Chairman.
For what purpose the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment. It's at the desk.
The member has the amendment. The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 338, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Moran of Virginia.
The gentleman is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Mr. Chairman, I'm surprised that this continuing resolution eliminates all funding for the very successful bipartisan-sponsored North American Wetlands Conservation Fund. Cuts $48 million. My amendment simply adds $50 million for the North American Wetlands Conservation Act. The offset is the EPA diesel emissions program, which in fact has been eliminated in the budget just proposed by the President. Now, both houses unanimously reauthorized what's called NAWCA. It's the acronym NAWCA is pronounced NAWCA, so I'm going to use NAWCA in the discussion. We reauthorized it unanimously in 2006. The appropriation authorization for NAWCA was increased to $75 million for fiscal years 2007 through 2012. It's wildly popular with all sportsmen and those who value our wetlands. So I'm surprised that H.R. 1 would eliminate it. This frankly shows what a meat-axe approach has been taken here today by some in the Republican majority. The North American Wetlands Conservation Fund conserves our waterfowl, fish, and wildlife resources while at the same time generating environmental and economic benefits. This is a successful partnership involving federal, state, and local governments and especially nonprofit organizations like Ducks Unlimited. The current CEO of Ducks Unlimited, Dale Hall, who incidentally was President George Bush's U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service director, wrote, and I quote, "If these cuts and actions take place, waterfowl hunters, and wetlands conservation would lose in a big way. In short, these actions would adversely affect all of us who care about and have funded wetlands and waterfowl conservation. We should remember conservation in America pays for itself through the economic return from hunters, anglers, and other outdoor enthusiasts. I could not have said it better than the spokesperson for the CEO of Ducks Unlimited, who served in the Bush administration as the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service Director. Every federal dollar provided by NAWCA must be matched by at least $1 from non-federal sources. Because the program is so effective, NAWCA funds are usually tripled or quadrupled on the local level. In short, this is both a highly popular and very successful program. Since its inception in 1989, more than 1,600 NAWCA projects have contributed to the conservation of more than 25 million acres of habitat across North America. The offset we use, the Diesel Emissions Grant Program, is a good program, but sometimes we have to make hard choices. The President's fiscal year 12 request also eliminates the diesel grant program, so as to encourage the truck industry to increase its own diesel R&D. I ask the members to support this amendment to protect our wetlands and wildlife and support the people who enjoy them. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to yield to the chair.
Very strong support. This has been one of the most successful conservation programs. It brings in the private sector. They add 2 or 3 times to the contribution here. And I think this is a program that is very worthy and should be supported, and I hope the gentleman's amendment will be accepted.
I greatly thank the chair of the full committee. Yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. What person? The gentleman from California rise?
Rise in opposition to the amendment.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes. Strike the last word.
The North American Wetlands Conservation Fund is a good program. I have no objections to that program. It's just a bad offset that the gentleman is choosing to move ahead with. Mr. Speaker, the $50 million that's included in the continuing resolution to support Diesel Emissions Reduction Act grants is a good program, because heavy diesel engines can operate for 20 to 30 years after they enter service. Many of these engines operating today were manufactured years before the modern clean air standards. DURA grants support projects to retrofit over 20 million aging diesel engines currently in use with modern technology to reduce toxic emissions and improve air quality. This successful environmental program is supported by a unique broad coalition of environmentalists, industry, state, and local governments. This program enjoys strong bipartisan support in both the House and the Senate, and was reauthorized in a lame duck session last Congress. Since 2008, the EPA has awarded over 500 DURA grants for projects nationwide. These grants leverage 2 state and local dollars for every $1 invested and provide $13 average dollars buy us cleaner air and more green jobs in every state in our nation. Perhaps most importantly, recent studies indicate that black carbon, like that emitted from diesel engines, is the worst kind of pollution. The retrofit technology supported by DURA reduces black carbon emissions by 90%. The EPA's third national assessment of toxic air pollutants found that 2.2 million Americans now live in areas where the air they breathe increases their risk of cancer to levels deemed grossly unacceptable, 1 in 10,000. Given these findings, we owe it to our constituents to continue to support clean air technology. Mr. Speaker, DURA is a win-win program. It supports green American jobs, improves the air quality for all Americans, and I would urge that it is not passed. Thank you.
Gentleman yields back.
Yield back.
Yields back. But for what purpose the gentlelady from California rise?
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentlelady is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today to speak in opposition to the gentleman's amendment, Section 1709. However, I want to say for the record I am completely supportive of the program that he spoke of today. This particular amendment, however, seeks to eliminate funding for the Diesel Emissions Reduction Act, a vital public health and environment and infrastructure program that was reauthorized with huge bipartisan support that Representative Calvert referred to through a bill I authored last year. And that is the purpose of my standing, is because I was an author of that bill this year. DERA is a proven program that improves air quality by reducing diesel emissions. It has strong bipartisan support in both the House and Senate and from a diverse coalition of transportation, health, and environmental organizations. I thank Congressman Moran, and I applaud his leadership efforts to protect and preserve our environment and natural resources. He has been a stalwart advocate in the struggle to reduce harmful emissions from antiquated coal-fired power plants and protect green space and green infrastructure. However, today is a rare moment that he and I do not agree. DERA is a voluntary, national, and state-level grant and a loan program that reduces the diesel emissions by upgrading and modernizing older diesel engines and equipment. For someone like me in my district, this is important. It's the lives of my constituents. By design, it looks to reduce the emissions from 20 million existing diesel engines in use today by as much of 90%. The $50 million designated for DERA is but half of the authorized level and already a 20% cut in the program from last year's funding. Although I would say for the record that it has not been terminated, it is merely a recommendation by the President at this time. Eliminating funding entirely would be a huge mistake and cause substantial detriment to the economic, health, and environmental interests, particularly of communities that are along port areas. Since DERA funding began in 2007, more than 3,000 projects nationwide have benefited from this program, creating considerable employment opportunities in the area of manufacturing, installation, and servicing of emissions-related technologies. The bill I authored this last year, which passed in December, will actually amplify job creation further by expanding the program and increasing the number of eligible beneficiaries. Additionally, DERA is widely considered one of the most cost-effective federal programs in the nation. The EPA has estimated that in California alone, the program averages more than $13 in health and economic benefits for every $1 that it receives in funding. Projections estimate that nearly 2,000 lives will be saved by 2017 in direct relation to DERA's impact on air quality. In my district, the positive benefits of DERA are far-reaching. Home to the two busiest container ports in the United States, the Port of Los Angeles and the Port of Long Beach. On average, 35,000 trucks commute to and from these ports daily. By the year 2030, this number will be expected to triple. Just imagine for a moment the pollution caused by these vehicles in a single day. Now think of those Americans who live along those freight corridors and are exposed to the pollutants on a daily basis. Would you want that for you and your family? In my district, these folks already suffer from asthma and cancer rates far above the national average, and it's documented. Air quality improvements and reductions in emissions are vital to the quality of life and health of these families and countless others throughout the nation. I would also like to add that DERA is often mentioned in association with the trucking industry and freight movement. There is another important area where diesel engines are most frequently utilized and where DERA will create a substantial necessary improvement in our public transportation and our school bus system. These vehicles are vital to the millions of Americans who rely upon them every day to get to work or school. Many of these folks, including young children whose lungs and immune systems are still developing and who are especially susceptible to health problems. We owe it to these young people and their families to give the DERA program our full support and to seek its funding maintained. DERA has been endorsed by a large coalition of leading environmental, health, and transportation organizations who also believe in its effectiveness at protecting and creating jobs, promoting healthy economies and healthier citizens. At a time when our future is so heavily dependent upon economic growth and infrastructure investment and improving the quality of life of average Americans, it seems counterintuitive to cut funding for a program that provides us with so many benefits. For these reasons, I urge opposition to the amendment, but I seek to work with my colleague to support other funding to support the program that he laid out. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman from California rise.
Mr. Chairman, to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, I rise to first very strongly oppose the gentleman's amendment and associate myself with the remarks of the gentlelady from Southern California. Before going to that, though, Mr. Chairman, I'd like to take a moment to express my deep appreciation to both the work of my chairman and his ranking member putting together what I consider to be overall a very, very fine bill. I know of Mike Simpson's concern about those issues that relate to our environment and the interior especially. He's a fabulous chairman, assisted today by a very, very fine young person who is his staff director, not so young as he used to be, Dave Lestrang. But this fine bill also is put together by a cross-section of great staffers who are doing all they can to improve the condition in which we live. I rise to oppose this amendment in no small part because Ken Calvert and I, over the years, have shared the same problem. We live in a region known as the Inland Empire, and it is surrounded by beautiful, beautiful mountains. It's a wonderful area. But during much of our lifetime, indeed, for decades, for 250 days plus a year, you could not see the mountains. How come? It wasn't because of fog. It was because of 7 million automobiles starting their engines in Los Angeles, and that which was spewed out going up against the mountains, crystallizing with sunlight, creating a thing called air pollution or smog. Indeed, the battle against air quality problems began many, many years ago for us. Efforts to create a new standard of regulatory enforcement that would make a difference in the region. Today, you can see that beautiful valley almost every day of the year because of the progress that we've made in terms of cleaning the emissions from mobile sources. We're very proud of the fact that we've controlled stationary sources. It's easy to point the finger at the big smokestack and say, oh my God, that's the problem. Indeed, we've solved 99% of all of those emissions, and air quality still is a challenge. When you come to this question today, we're talking about serious efforts to improve the emissions that come from largely trucks, but diesel using engines. And those emissions have a tremendous impact upon air quality as well. Over the years, all of our efforts have saved I don't know how many tens of thousands of lives because we've improved the condition in which these people have to live and breathe. But to suggest that we ought to begin to break down the progress being made on these engines by way of this relatively easy, but I must say simplistic kind of transfer is a very, very big mistake. So, Mr. Chairman, in the strongest way, I'd urge our members to vote no on this $50 million transfer and recognize that it's a lot more important to save the lives of those breathing foul air than to give a pittance to a very important environmental problem. I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition on this amendment? If not, the question is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia. Those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed say no. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it.
I would ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote is requested pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18. Further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Virginia will be postponed. Madam Reading Clerk.
Page 265, line 22. Section 1710, the level for Department of the Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Neotropical Migratory Bird Conservation, $4,430,000. Section 1711, the level for Department of the Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service, Multinational Species Conservation Fund, $7,875,000. Section 1712, level for the Department of the Interior, United States Fish and Wildlife Service.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Washington rise?
I move to strike the requisite number of words. I'm going to be very brief. I was very disappointed that the committee, thank you. I was very disappointed, I strike the requisite number of words. I was very disappointed that the committee zeroed the state and tribal wildlife grant program. I think this has been a great program that's helped the states do plans on how they can use their habitat to protect endangered species. This is the kind of work that's necessary so that we don't get future listings. I know my friend from Idaho and others are concerned about the Endangered Species Act and the number of listings, and we'll talk more about that later. But this was a very important program and one that I, as chairman, strongly supported and actually created, And so I just want to mention that I hope in conference we can at least maintain some level of funding for this program. And I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Clerk will continue to read.
Page 266, line 9, section 1713. Before the end of the 60-day period beginning on the date of enactment, the Secretary of the Interior
For
shall
what purpose the gentlelady
the
from
final
Wyoming
rule.
rise?
Mr. Chairman, I have an amendment at the desk. It's number 194.
Secretary will, the clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 194, printed in Amendment number 194, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mrs. Lummis of Wyoming.
Mr. Chairman,
For what purpose the gentleman from Virginia
I reserve
rise?
a point of order on this motion.
Chairman reserves a point of order. Gentleman reserves a point of order. Gentlelady from Wyoming is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And first of all, I want to thank you personally, as well as your colleague from Utah, Mr. Chaffetz, also Mrs. McMorris Rogers of Washington, for your work on this amendment. The continuing resolution, as written, would reinstate a 2009 Fish and Wildlife determination that the gray wolf in Montana and Idaho should be removed from the endangered species list. This amendment would replace that 2009 determination with an earlier approved Fish and Wildlife determination, the one made in 2008, and that expands the scope of delisting of the gray wolf to include the full range of the northern Rockies wolf. You know, Mr. Chairman, after gray wolves were introduced in 1995 into Yellowstone National Park in my home state and placed on the endangered species list under Section 10J, which is the non-essential experimental population section of the Endangered Species Act, a list was determined about what it would take to recover the species. When would we consider it recovered? And it was determined by experts at the time that the recovery would be complete if the population of wolves grew to 300 wolves with at least 30 breeding pairs. That was the target. That was the goal. 300 wolves, 30 breeding pairs. So how many wolves are there today, Mr. Chairman? Here we are, 16 years later. There are more than 1,600 wolves and 113 breeding pairs. By every reasonable definition, the wolf has recovered. And yet these wolves remain on the endangered species list. They remain protected even as they overwhelm and decimate other wild game herds. For example, in the Gros Ventre, the moose population, in terms of young calves, has declined 90%. 90%. And it's due to wolf depredation. Wolves remain protected in each state because of court determinations, not because of science. And it's now time to be honest about the wolf and its recovery. Its continued inclusion on the endangered species list has everything to do with special interests and emotion, and nothing to do with science. Organizations that repeatedly sue the government at taxpayer expense orchestrate these strategies and make people believe that the wolf is not recovered. The simple truth is the wolf is doing very well. Lest anyone be confused, my amendment will not create an open season on wolves. It will return management of the wolf populations back to the states, and they're the ones who suffer the effects of the wolves. It will allow for appropriate management of wolf herds by any definition that have fully recovered. So it's time to be honest. It's time to delist. Mr. Chairman, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentlelady yields back. Gentleman from Virginia.
Mr. Chairman, I make a point of order against the amendment because it proposes to change existing law and constitutes legislation in an appropriation bill and therefore violates Clause 2 of Rule 21. The rule states, in pertinent part, an amendment to a general appropriation bill shall not be in order if changing existing law. The amendment imposes additional duties beyond what is legislatively authorized. So I now ask for a ruling from the Chair.
Is there any other member who wishes to speak to this point of order? Chair will rule, as soon as my heart. The Chair finds that this amendment imposes new duties on the Secretary to reissue a different final rule that is required to be reissued by the pending section. The amendment therefore constitutes legislation in violation of Clause 2 of Rule 21. The point of order is sustained and the amendment is not in order.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
The clerk will read. Gentleman from Washington, for what purpose?
Even though you had a broken heart, I strike the requisite number of words. Even though you had a broken heart, you made the right ruling. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
I don't think the gentleman from Washington was recognized. The clerk will read.
Page 266, line 16, Section 1714, the level for Department of the Interior, National Park Service, operation of the National Park System, $2,237,674,000. Section 1715, the level for the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, Partnership Project Grants, $0. Section 1716, the level for the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, National Recreation and Preservation, $57,829,000. Section 1717, the level for the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, Historic Preservation Fund, $54,500,000. Section 1718, the level for the Department of the Interior, National Park Service Construction, $171,713,000. Section 1719, the contract authority provided for fiscal year 2011 is rescinded. Section 1720, the level for the Department of the Interior, National Park Service, Land Acquisition and State Assistance, $14,100,000. Section 1721, the level for the Department of the Interior, United States Geological Survey, Surveys, Investigations, and Research, $1,086,163,000. Section 1722, the level for the Department of the Interior, Minerals Management Service, Royalty and Offshore Minerals Management, $239,478,000. Section 1723, the level for the Department of the Interior, Minerals Management Service, Oil Spill Research, $10,632,000. Section 1724, during the fiscal year 2011, the Secretary may establish accounts and transfer funds among and between the offices and bureaus affected by the reorganization only in conformance with the House and Senate Committees on Appropriations. Section 1725.
For what purpose does the gentleman from Maryland rise?
Mr. Speaker, I move to strike the last word.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We're fortunate that the new Republican majority brought their proposal before this Congress the day after President Obama submitted his budget plan for next year. We are fortunate because it gives the American people the opportunity to compare very different approaches. The President's budget is tough, but it is responsible. It's tough because it cuts non-security discretionary spending by $400 billion over the next decade to the lowest share of the economy since the Eisenhower administration. It's responsible because it steadily reduces the deficit while making targeted investments in areas like education, clean energy, infrastructure, and scientific innovation, investments that will strengthen our economy and make sure America wins the future in a competitive global marketplace. One of those key areas of investment the President has proposed is infrastructure. Now, the American Society of Civil Engineers, hardly a left-wing group, issued a report card on the state of America's deteriorating infrastructure. They gave us practically failing grades, mostly Ds and D-minuses, for the state of our roads, of our schools, of our transit, and drinking water, not grades that we would want our kids to bring home from school. So I'm very pleased that the President has announced that he wants to make critical investments in this area. As reported yesterday in USA Today, using the analysis of the Associated General Contractors, again, not a liberal group, his plan could create about 5.4 million construction jobs and 10 million more jobs in related industries in the broader economy. At a time when the construction industry is facing over 20% unemployment, those are exactly the kind of smart investments that will help grow our economy. And this proposal and this investment is supported by a diverse range of groups, from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce to the AFL-CIO. The President's tough and balanced approach stands in stark contrast to the proposal we're seeing on the floor today. The proposal that we're talking about today, with very immediate and deep cuts, is a reckless approach when too many families are struggling to make ends meet, and it will do virtually nothing to address our long-term structural deficit. The Economic Policy Institute found that the proposal before this House today would likely put 800,000 Americans out of work. Indeed, that's why the bipartisan commission charged with reducing our deficits and debt, along with the bipartisan Domenici-Rivlin Commission, recommended against taking deep, immediate cuts. Yes to coming together now to put together a plan to reduce the deficit in a stable way. No to immediate, deep cuts that could hurt a very fragile economy. And let me read you exactly what the Bipartisan Commission on Deficit and Debt Reduction said. They said, quote, "In order to avoid shocking the fragile economy, the Commission recommends waiting until 2012 to begin enacting programmatic spending cuts." In other words, below the CR level. And that's exactly what the President's budget does. Why should we cut essential investments in Head Start and education rather than eliminate huge taxpayer subsidies to the oil industry? In fact, just today, the GAO came out with a report talking about the huge bonanza oil companies are getting for lack of royalty payments on many of their lands. Now, just yesterday, in the Budget Committee, we had the OMB Director, Jack Lew, testified. Mr. Lew reminded us that the last time he had testified before the Budget Committee was when he had served as the OMB Director for President Clinton. And then when he left office, he left the country with a $5.6 trillion surplus in an economy that during that 8-year period added 20.8 million private sector jobs. Unfortunately, we know the end of the movie. Those huge surpluses were squandered. The previous administration to this one, the Bush administration, cut taxes for the very wealthy, and through a number of other policy actions turned a $5.6 trillion surplus into a sea of deficits. And by the end of that 8-year period, 653,000 private sector jobs were eliminated. So, Mr. Speaker, I just say to my colleagues, I hope we will oppose this approach and accept the approach the President has
Gentleman's time
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I thank you.
For what purpose the gentleman from California? Gentleman doesn't. The clerk will read.
Page 270, line 3, section 1725, the level for the Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Operation of Indian Programs, $2,336,865,000. Section 1726, the level for the Department of the Interior, Bureau of Indian Affairs, Construction, $216,100,000. Section 1727, the level for Department of the Interior, Bureau Indian Affairs, Indian Land and Water Claims, Settlements, and Miscellaneous Payments to Indians, $46,480,000. Section 1728, the level for the Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Office of the Secretary, Salaries and Expenses, $117,336,000. Section 1729, the level for the Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Insular Affairs, Assistance to Territories, $78,516,000. Section 1730, the level for Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Insular Affairs, Compact of Free Association, $5,422,000. Section 1731, the level for Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Offices of the Solicitor, Salaries and Expenses, $64,845,000. Section 1732, the level for Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Office of the Inspector General, Salaries and Expenses, $48,389,000. Section 1733, the level for Department of the Interior, Departmental Offices, Office of the Special Trustee for American Indians, Federal Trust Programs, $168,115,000. Section 1734, the level for Department of the Interior, Department-wide Programs, Wildland Fire Management, $769,897,000. Section 1735, the level for Department of the Interior, Department-wide Programs, Natural Resource Damage Assessment and Restoration, Natural Resource Damage Assessment Fund, $6,320,000. Section 1736, the level for Department of the Interior, Department-wide Programs, Working Capital Fund, $80,119,000. Section 1737, the level for Environmental Protection Agency, Science and Technology, $790,510,000.
I have an amendment of the desk.
The clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 376, printed in the Congressional Record, offered by Mr. Flake of Arizona.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman. This amendment just seeks to reduce EPA's Science and Technology account by $64 million. It transfers the money into the spending reduction account. $64 million is the level of the agency's astronomically expensive Science to Achieve Results, or STAR program, funded in fiscal year 2010. It's the intent of this amendment to zero out this costly program for the rest of the year, something that, due to procedural limitations, will be accomplished by supporting the cut to the account's top line for that purpose and the agency's operational plan that will come forth in 2011. According to the EPA, the STAR program is the agency's primary grants program for funding extramural research in environmental science and engineering. In a recent press release, the EPA boasts that the taxpayer-backed awards, quote, ensure the best science is being used to protect the air we breathe, the water we drink, and the land we build our communities on. What it doesn't mention is that these grants average 3 years and about $1 million. This program was funded at roughly $60 million last year, and the President requested $87 million for fiscal year 2011. I believe the committee used $50 million, just assuming that a funding level based on the CR for the rest of the year. Don't get me wrong, if we're printing money in a basement and we have plenty of it, this may be something we may want to spend some money on. I'm sure something good comes out of it. But we're not in that situation now. We have a debt of $14 trillion. We have an annual deficit now of $1.5 trillion. And when we're funding research like this, just out of an account to give to grad students, I think it's time to question whether or not this is the time we should do this or not. Not all of the grants that are issued, obviously, is used for good research. And it's not all above reproach. For example, here are just a couple of the reports that we received, or the research was done on these topics. Quote, environmental regulation and productivity benefits in the paper industry, estimating ownership and the use of older cars, transforming office parks into transit villages, public opinion on environment and water quality management in the New York watershed. And ironically, this was a report on a study on experimental programs to stimulate competitive research. I thought that's what this program is. That's what it does. I've often talked about a lot of the earmarks we used to have were just simply earmark incubators that begat more earmarks. It seems that some of the funding for studies like these are studies that beget further studies. And if we can't move in now and say, hey, maybe we ought to slim back a little now and save a little money for the taxpayer. Remember, the money saved here will go into the spending reduction account and can be applied against this year's deficit. We have to ask ourselves, how can we go back to our constituents and explain, sorry, that $50 million was better spent giving out research dollars to study experimental programs to stimulate competitive research, or transforming office parks into transit villages, or public opinion on environment and water quality management in the New York City watershed, or environmental regulation and productivity benefits in the paper industry. Let's say to the taxpayer that we're serious here, that we're serious about this debt and this deficit. Let's vote for this amendment and put $50 million into the spending reduction account. With that, I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. For what purpose the gentleman from Virginia rise?
Mr. Chair, I rise to strike the requisite number of words in opposition to this amendment.
The gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Mr. Chairman, the scale of this reduction to EPA science shuts down EPA STAR research grants this year and next, affecting researchers in universities throughout the nation. The Science to Achieve Results program, whose acronym is STAR, grants money to leverage innovative, cutting-edge research with universities across the nation. Now, I don't know about the way they have titled some of these grants, but I suspect that the gentleman doesn't know much more than I do about the specific grant itself other than the title. But what I do know is that this amendment ends funding for the Children's Health Research Centers that focus on the study of children's environmental health hazards, including asthma and exposure to chemicals. It ends funding for research for 4 EPA air research centers that focus on the health effects of air pollutants on all ages of Americans, especially the most physically vulnerable and those in smog-laden communities. It ends funding for EPA's groundbreaking computational toxicology research effort, which enables us to screen literally thousands of chemicals at one time. I've seen how this works, and it's extraordinarily productive and cost-efficient. It screens them for environmental health hazards and saves millions of dollars in the process. These innovative and cost-saving tools also offer the potential to greatly reduce our dependence on animal testing. The amendment ends funding for critical research to assess risks of nanotechnology and to develop approaches to ensure the safe development of nanomaterials. The amendment also wipes out EPA's STAR Academic Research Fellowships program. It will affect 350 current and future fellows, creating real economic hardship in the midst of a depressed economy. Cutting funding for the STAR Fellows program eliminates the opportunity to develop the future generation of the best scientific minds to address 21st century environmental problems with new and innovative scientific and technological solutions. Now, it's not the end of the world, but it will be the end of a program that works very well, that recruits, trains, and integrates some of the very best minds in preserving and protecting our environment. So for those reasons, I would urge rejection of this amendment, Mr. Chairman. I yield back my time.
Gentleman yields back. For purpose of the gentleman from Idaho rise.
Mr. Chairman, I move to strike the last word.
Gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise in opposition to the amendment. In the CR, we've already proposed deep cuts with tough choices. In the Interior and Environment section, we have proposed to cut $4.4 billion and eliminate 26 different programs. The STAR program competitively funds research grants and graduate fellowships in numerous environmental science and engineering disciplines. I would note, as the gentleman from Arizona knows, this is competitively awarded in that they actually, as I said, compete for these. The EPA receives approximately 2,000 to 2,500 proposals each year and funds about 150 research grants and 125 graduate fellowships. You know, I'd be a little leery about coming down here and just naming off the title of what a research project is and then saying that's silly, because I don't know. I don't know exactly what they're trying to do with some of these things. You actually need to dig into it and find out what they're trying to find out with some of these research grants. A few years ago, some people did this with, I think it was the National Academy of Science research grants. And I can remember some of my colleagues brought down amendments to defund this research grant or that research grant, and one of them was to defund a research grant on studying brown fat in panda bears. And of course we all on the floor went, wow, that sounds silly. Why are we studying brown fat in panda bears? Can't we actually study brown fat in American bears? And when I called out to the National Academy of Science, what I found out is who supports that research was NASA. Because if you're ever going to do deep space research, you need to know something about brown fat. Guess what animal has more brown fat than any other animal on Earth? Panda bears. That's why they were doing it. So just to look at what the title of a research project is kind of a silly way to propose eliminating that and making fun of the program. Some of them may be silly. I don't know. But I know these are peer-reviewed and that they actually are competitively granted, and the gentleman from Arizona has always been concerned that we give earmarks that are not competitively granted. Here we have a program that is competitively granted, so that seems to me the right way to do it. Like many other EPA programs, the CR reduces the STAR grant funding. We did so by applying $10 million reduction to fund the grants at $51 million in the CR, which is $8 million below the 2008 level. Therefore, while we understand the intent of the amendment is to eliminate all funding for the STAR grants, there is no longer $61.4 million to the CR in the CR to reduce the STAR grants, and other research programs would need to be reduced based on the way the amendment has been drafted. In addition, I believe we must maintain our scientific competitiveness as we work to bring our fiscal house in order, and zeroing out this program I don't believe is in the best interests of our country or the right thing to do. This is a program that we should and will discuss with the EPA on the record during the 2012 budget hearings, and we will either build the case for further reductions or elimination of the program, or we will have a better understanding of why we should look elsewhere for additional cuts. Therefore, I recommend my colleagues vote no on this amendment, given that it would unintentionally cut EPA's research by more than that which is in the CR for the STAR grants, and we will be taking a look at this during our hearings, and the gentleman sits on the committee and will be obviously involved in those hearings as we have the EPA before us for our oversight hearings. I yield back the balance of my time.
The gentleman yields back. Does anyone else seek recognition? The question then is on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona. Those in favor say aye. Those opposed say nay. No. The opinion of the chair, the noes have it. Gentleman from Arizona.
I would ask for a recorded vote.
Recorded vote has been requested. Pursuant to Clause 6 of Rule 18, further proceedings on the amendment offered by the gentleman from Arizona will be postponed. Sorry, for what purpose does the gentleman from Texas rise?
I rise to offer an amendment designated as Amendment 407.
Clerk will designate the amendment.
Amendment number 407, printed in the congressional record, offered by Mr. Hall of Texas.
For what purpose the gentleman from Virginia, Idaho seek recognition?
Mr. Chairman, I reserve a point of order against the gentleman's amendment.
Point of order is reserved. The gentleman from Texas is recognized.
Mr. Chairman, I rise today in support of my amendment directing the United States Environmental Protection Agency to enter into an agreement with the National Academy of Sciences to perform a comprehensive review of non-mercury hazardous air pollutants emitted by electric generating units and industrial boilers. Recognizing the boiler maximum achievable control technology called MAC is moving toward the end of the rulemaking process, while the utility MAC will debut soon. My amendment requires that the review provide for health and economic data, including impacts on job creation, energy price, supply, and reliability associated with the potential regulation of non-mercury hazardous air pollutants. The Clean Air Act regulates two kinds of air emissions: criteria pollutants, which are high in volume, and hazardous air pollutants, which are low in volume but can be toxic. Folks are familiar with the most noteworthy of the hazardous air pollutants for utilities and industrial boilers, mercury. Let me be clear, my amendment does nothing to affect mercury controls. The amendment focuses only on those hazardous air pollutants other than mercury. EPA simply fails to do all the necessary homework when it comes to potential regulation of hazardous air pollutants other than mercury. This amendment asks the National Academy of Sciences to assist EPA in doing its homework and encourages EPA to listen and encourages EPA to learn. This will assist EPA in establishing a clear and direct administrative record for non-mercury hazardous air pollutants. And without adequate study, regulations in this area could place jobs and economic output at risk while threatening household budgets. The power sector faces an avalanche of regulations from EPA, and it's important to get each of them right and correct. A recent executive order laid out a new review process for regulations and asked that the agencies consider cost and how best to reduce burdens for American businesses and consumers. The amendment echoes the need for responsible regulations that protect health and environment, but also provide for reasonable rates and dates. The EPA Maximum Achievable Control Technology Rule for industrial, commercial, and institutional boilers and process heaters could impose tens of billions of dollars in capital costs at thousands of facilities across the country. I, along with a large number of my colleagues, sent a letter to EPA Administrator Lisa Jackson expressing our concerns with the proposed rule. It's my understanding that although the Boiler MAC rule will come out later this week, upon reconsideration of the rule, the information gathered by the review required under this amendment may be useful. I remain concerned as EPA moves toward a utility MAC rule. Logically, I bring this amendment to the floor today to protect a simple way of thinking. The government should not regulate without sound science to back it up. Let's remind EPA to slow down and allow for reasoning along with regulation. I yield back.
Gentleman yields back. Gentleman from Idaho.
Mr. Chairman, I understand the concern of the gentleman from Texas, and we pledge to work with him as the EPA comes before our committee to address this issue, but I must insist on my point of order. I make a point of order against the amendment because it proposes to change existing law and constitutes legislation and appropriation bill and therefore violates Clause 2 of Rule 21. The rule states in pertinent part, an amendment to a general appropriation bill shall not be in order if it changes existing law. This amendment gives affirmative action in effect, and I ask for a ruling by the Chair.
Does any other member wish to be heard on the point of order? Seeing none, the Chair finds that this amendment includes language imparting direction. The amendment therefore constitutes legislation in violation. Clause 2 of Rule 21. The point of order is sustained. The amendment is not in order. What purpose does the gentleman rise? Gentleman from New Mexico is recognized for 5 minutes.
I rise today in opposition to the drastic cuts in this continuing resolution and the amendments that make further cuts that threaten to weaken our economy and destroy jobs. It's critical that while we face growing budget constraints, we do not shortchange investments that will create jobs or provide vital services that New Mexicans rely on. Unfortunately, many of the cuts proposed in this bill and in a number of amendments would negatively impact our communities in New Mexico. For example, in the wake of the natural gas outage that left thousands of homes across the state without heat, this bill cuts the low-income home energy assistance program that helps working families, senior citizens, and disabled individuals heat their homes. At a time when New Mexico needs critical investments in education so that we can prepare our children to be the next generation of leaders, the House Republican plan makes drastic cuts to education at all levels, beginning with early education. Republicans cut the Head Start program, which helps build a strong foundation for New Mexico's children. The bill also cuts funding for programs that help poor school districts. With more than one-third of New Mexico students failing to graduate from high school, we must do more, not less, to ensure our children succeed. In addition, the Republican bill cuts Pell Grants that our young adults rely on to help make college more affordable. Arbitrary cuts to New Mexico's national labs that are contained in this bill will hinder their ability to promote U.S. competitiveness and job creation. We're ending our ability to win the race before we can even begin. Instead of making these cuts, we need to outpace the competition. We need to out-educate and out-innovate the rest of the world in order to grow our economy and put people back to work right here in New Mexico. And as we debate the proposed amendments in this section of the bill, I'm extremely concerned with the amendments that will be proposed today that make cuts to the Land and Water Conservation Fund. In New Mexico, We take pride in our beautiful landscapes and the protection of our water. The LWCF has helped to protect dozens of New Mexico icons, including Tent Rocks National Monument, Valles Caldera National Preserve, Rio Grande River Gorge, Santa Fe National Forest, and the Petroglyphs National Monument, just to name a few. These attacks on the Land and Water Conservation Fund would eliminate a bipartisan program that has existed for 45 years by preventing revenues deposited in the LWCF account from being used for their authorized purposes, such as protecting public lands and promoting recreation. The Land and Water Conservation Fund was established by Congress in 1964 as a bipartisan conservation offset for offshore oil and gas drilling. Under current law, outer continental shelf oil and gas leases and royalty receipts are deposited in the dedicated LWCF account in the Treasury. However, only a fraction of the annual receipts deposited in the LWCF are appropriated despite a surplus of over $17 billion. In New Mexico, outdoor recreation is an integral part of the economy. And I know when I visit with many of our colleagues here in the Congress, Democrats and Republicans, everyone's eager to get out to New Mexico. The Outdoor Industry Association reports that recreation contributes about $730 billion annually to the U.S. economy, supports nearly 6.5 million jobs across the country, and generates $88 billion in state, annual, and national tax revenues. A recent study by the Trust for Public Land found that every dollar invested in the LWCF returns $4 in economic value. Protecting the Land and Water Conservation Fund will expand opportunities for all Americans to have access to parks, natural areas for outdoor recreation, and for hunting. Protecting the Land and Water Conservation Fund has immediate relevance to our efforts to create jobs in this country, and it's critically important that we ensure funding for this important federal program is protected. We're also working together to find a permanent solution to the LWCF funding shortfalls over the long term. I urge my colleagues to oppose these amendments and vote no on this short-sighted spending bill that will hurt families and put more people out of work. While Republicans say, and I quote, "So be it, to chop in American jobs, the people of New Mexico deserve better." I yield back the balance of my time.
Gentleman yields back. Clerk will read.